this is Lee, the acupuncture and the herbalist. Today, I'd like to talk about the Parkinson's disease. For the past 10 years, I have been treating many patients with Parkinson's disease. And back to older time, usually people get Parkinson's like around 70, 80, but now more and more 50, 60 years old develop Parkinson's disease. So the reason, the pathology to develop that Parkinson's disease is the neurons, the nerves which produce dopamine or use dopamine as a neurotransmitter to coordinate the motion, the movement of the body. Those neurons are degenerating and in a fastest pace. So the degeneration is faster than regeneration. Then you quickly lose those dopamine producing nerves. Those neurons usually are located in a brain area called substantia nigra. So they have some kind of a black color under the microscope. That's why there's a nigra, this black color. So to talk about the factors contribute to Parkinson's disease, people talk about genetic, or your father, your mother have that, so you are going to have that. But I think if your parents get it around 90 years old and you got it around 50 to 60 years old, you really cannot blame your parents, because you shouldn't turn on those bad genes at that early stage. So what reasons turn on those bad genes so that patients get early onset of Parkinson's? There is one chemical called MPTP, which the drug user back to 1980s in California, a group of drug users used heroin, which were contaminated by this chemical called MPTP, and this group of people develop Parkinson's disease. So chemical definitely will contribute to the neuron degeneration. And also, if you don't eat sufficient fruit or vegetables, your nerves will degenerate faster. And alcohol is a big factor. So if you only drink like one glass, but every day, it depends on how sensitive your nerves are to the alcohol. Generally, drinking every day, even just one glass, is not really good for the neurons. I'll give you an example. I have a patient, her mother lived up to 90 years old, the grandmother lived up to 98. So I asked the 98 years old grandmother, how he functioned, and did he has dementia, Parkinson's, or those kind of age-related disease? And she said no, she just died of old age and died in the sleep. On the other hand, the mother who lived up to 90 years old, and of course she has good genes, and she developed Parkinson's disease in the early 80s. So she suffered for so many years, even though she has good genes. So, and I follow up those kind of story from the patients many times. And so I see the trend that I don't think alcohol every day is really good for our brain. Even just one glass, it can raise your cholesterol, it produces the heat, generally cause inflammation in your intestine, stomach, and also the brain. And alcohol can induce dopamine release. So people feel happy when they drink alcohol. But when you have this surge of dopamine and you actually kind of deplete the nerves from dopamine. So if you don't sleep well and you are dehydrating for the next 2 days, then those neurons are really suffering. So I would say if you really love alcohol, keep it on the weekend, like once or twice a week. It's much better than every day, even just one glass. And the other thing I want to emphasize is the dark chocolate, of course, the sugar stuff. So people think dark chocolate is good, but even with 85% of dark chocolate, one small piece will have at least 3 teaspoons of sugar. And recently I also treated patients started the early onset of Parkinson's and couldn't write and has to stop working, and she really does not have any bad habit except she loves dark chocolate. And the other artist, she loves ice cream. So the other artist, she started early onset 50s, and she didn't know. Nobody tell him that sugar can cause more inflammation. So she exercised, and this artist had first the L-Dopa to treat the disease, and he got better. And after a few years, it stopped working. Then they put a stimulator in his brain, and deep brain stimulation. That worked beautifully for many years, and he didn't change the habit and still ice cream every day. And by the early 60s, he can hardly walk. He bent over, and he was in the wheelchair. So just go easy with dark chocolate. Even it's good stuff, but watch the sugar contents. Then what can help this condition? Acupuncture definitely will help reduce the neuron death rate. And a study published in Journal of Physiology Science recently, they use small intestine 3, which on your hand, and gallbladder 34, which underneath the head of the fibula, and those 2 points to treat animals. And interestingly, they used the chemical which drug user the drug were contaminated. We mentioned MPTP. They use MPTP injection into the animals and induce the Parkinson's disease. And then they use acupuncture needling on this point, on the leg, the gallbladder point, and for 12 consecutive days. And they find out it slows down the neuron death, and also it makes the enzyme which reduce the oxidative stress. They are called superoxide dismutase and catalase. These 2 enzyme function actually improved with the acupuncture. So for Parkinson's disease patient, first you need to change the lifestyle. Second, you need a sufficient acupuncture treatment so that we can maintain the healthy neuron function and eventually help regenerate the new neurons.